In this video, I'll be talking about substance use and substance abuse. And the way we classify substance abuse for any substances that we use is used with the DSM-5. And this is the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And it's used by clinicians to diagnose individuals suffering from various psychological disorders. And drug use disorders are addictive disorders, and the criteria for specific substance disorders are described in this manual. And individuals diagnosed with a substance use disorder, there's often a compulsive pattern of a drug's use that is often associated with both physical and psychological dependence on the drug. And a substance use disorder often involves a physical dependence, which are changes in normal bodily functions, or a psychological dependence, which has an emotional rather than physical need for the drug and may use the drug to relieve any psychological distress. Intolerance is linked to physiological dependence, and it occurs when a person requires more and more of a drug to achieve the same effects that they previously experienced at lower doses. And a drug withdrawal includes a variety of negative symptoms experienced when drug use is discontinued. So let's say a person uses this amount of drugs, let's say for, I don't know, alcohol. Someone has an alcohol substance abuse issue and drink this much alcohol and get a level of effect that they desire. The next time that they might want to drink alcohol might have to be higher, because now their tolerance for the drug is now higher to maintain that same effect that they had previously. And so each time they have to drink more and more in order to achieve the same effect of the drug, because their tolerance gets raised. And as you could see, as people use more and more substances, this creates a substance abuse issue. Here are the different classifications of substances. So we have antipsychotics, we have stimulants, depressants, and hallucinogens. Depressants includes a drug that tends to suppress the central nervous system and its activity. And with repeated use of many central nervous system depressants, such as alcohol, as I mentioned, a person becomes physically dependent upon the substance and will exhibit signs of both tolerance and withdrawal. So with repeated use, as I mentioned, their tolerance will continue to go up, and as their tolerance goes up, their withdrawal also goes up, and they tend to start craving the substance. And these drugs are similar to our GABA neurotransmitters, as you see here. So these are different examples of depressants, and they simulate the same neurotransmitter as GABA in these neurotransmitters. And so when we ingest alcohol, the alcohol acts as though it's a GABA neurotransmitter. And so this increases the tendency to decrease our central nervous system and to slow down our functions of the body. And because GABA has a quieting effect on the brain and really dulls the brain, GABA agonists also have a quieting effect, such as the depressants, as you see here. And depressants are often prescribed to treat both anxiety and insomnia because they replicate the GABA neurotransmitter that occurs naturally in your brain. Next, we have stimulants. And stimulants increase overall levels of neural activity. And many of these drugs act as agonists of the dopamine neurotransmitter. And dopamine activity is often associated with reward and craving. And so we often want more stimulants because these stimulants act as dopamine neurotransmitters, which I mentioned is associated with a reward and pleasurable experience. And these drugs include cocaine, amphetamines, bath salts, ecstasy, nicotine, and even caffeine. And amphetamines are commonly prescribed to children diagnosed with ADHD. And this is a stimulant that can help different disorders such as ADHD. And here's an example of a cocaine molecule simulating dopamine. And so our brain recognizes this chemical similar to dopamine, and so it takes it up into this presynaptic cell here. And so the more dopamine we have, or the more cocaine or other stimulants that we take, the more we would want to experience this stimulant. And then we start to crave it and want that same pleasurable experience that we've had while taking the stimulants. And then next is opiates. And this is a category of drugs that includes heroin, morphine, methadone, and codeine. And opioids tend to decrease pain. And opioid drugs mimic pain-killing mechanisms and have an extremely high potential for abuse. It's very addictive. And natural opioids, called opiates, come naturally from a occurring compound found in the poppy flower. And opiates are commonly used in hospitals, such as morphine, to decrease pain. It's also in some cough suppressants, anti-nausea medications, and antidiarrheal medications. And then our last category is hallucinogens, which is a class of drugs that result in alterations of sensory and perceptual experiences, such as visual hallucinations. And this can cause hallucinations of body sensations and a skewed perception of time, or maybe even where you're at in the present moment. And hallucinogens can vary in neurotransmitter systems that they affect. So these different hallucinogens can mimic different types of neurotransmitters. Some types of hallucinogens is LSD, PCP, ketamine, and this mimics the NMDA glutamate receptor in our brain. And then other states of consciousness include hypnosis. And this is a state of extreme internal focus and attention while trying to minimize attention to our external stimuli. And in therapeutic settings, a clinician may use hypnotism to alter the thoughts and perceptions of a patient. Hypnotism has also been used to draw out information believed to be deeply buried in someone's memory. And for individuals who are especially open to the power of suggestion, hypnosis can prove to be a very effective technique. And historically, hypnosis has been viewed with some suspicion because of its portrayal in popular media. But contrary to popular belief, individuals undergoing hypnosis usually have a clear memory of what's going on through their hypnotic experience, and are usually in control of their own behaviors. And one theory of how hypnosis works is that it's a disassociated state of consciousness. And then another theory, a social cognitive theory of hypnosis, sees people in different hypnotic states as performing a social role of a hypnotized person. And as we learn in social psychology, people's behavior can be shaped by their expectations of how they should act in a given situation. So if a person is on stage, and they're more likely to be undergoing through the power of persuasion or suggestion, they might see this as a social role to play if a person is on stage performing for other people. And another state of consciousness is meditation, which is the act of focusing on a single target, such as the breath or repeated sound. And this is aimed to increase awareness of the present moment. And while hypnosis is generally achieved through the interaction between a therapist and the person being treated, people can meditate alone. And these meditative techniques have roots in religious practices, but it has over time grown in popularity among different practitioners of alternative medicine. And research has indicated that meditation may help reduce blood pressure, manage hypertension, stress management, sleep quality, and overall anxiety disorders. And that's it for our Chapter 4 States of Consciousness video series. Please make sure to complete the review assignment and activity, and make sure to study for the exam. I'll see you next time.